Hello and welcome back. You're going to continue with building up our specification pattern, and in this class I'm going to show you how to add now the specification evaluator, and that class will help us to generate the array queryable for the list of all the expressions that we will be needing to query the database. And in order to do that, we are going to add now the specification evaluator, and the specification evaluator will be in the infrastructure. So I'm going to go into the infrastructure, into the data, and I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call this as specification evaluator, like this one. And this specification evaluator is going to take the T entity, so I'm going to call this as T entity so as to make this as descriptive as possible. So I'm going to say where T entity will be used by the class from that's derived from the base entity, like this one. Inside here I'm going to add now a static class that will help us now to generate the array queryable that will be used. So I'm going to go inside here and I'm going to say public static, and I'm going to give this as type of array queryable, and it will be a type of T entity like this one, and I'm going to call this as get query. And inside here I'm going to pass in the array queryable of the type of T entity, and I'm going to be calling this as input query, like this one. And again, after passing this, I'm going to bring this down. We need also to pass the array specification. So I'm going to say array specification and of type T entity, and I'm going to call this as spec, like this one. All right, and I'm going to of course go inside this, and let me bring this down. Okay, and inside here we are going to first distinguish that the query will be the input query. So I'm going to say query will be this input query, and in order to evaluate the criteria we need to check if now inside the specification the criteria that is set there is not empty. And I'm going to say if spec.criteria is not equal to null, I'm going to see the criteria that is in there. Whenever it is not null, that's where I'm going to be using this inside our expressions. I'm going to say query will be equal to, let me bring this down, query will be equal to query dot where, and you need to add the where as this is now a criteria, and I'm going to say spec.criteria, like this one. And again we need also to add the query for adding the includes, and as we're going to be adding more than one includes, we need to make this as an aggregate. And the way we do that, I'm going to say that query is going to be equal to spec.includes, and in this case I'm going to say aggregate, as we're going to be having more than one include and you need to combine them. And inside here I'm going to, for example, they tell us to add these kind of things, and you need to provide this and this. And the way you're going to do this, I'm going to say query, and I'm going to add the bracket. I'm going to say current and include, and I'm going to say this we go to in current dot include, and this will be the one from the here. And after adding this, I'm going to go ahead and say include that will be getting from here. After this we can go ahead and add the return, and the thing that we are going to return here will be a query. And when you point this, and you can see that this query will be now array queryable. Cool. And after doing this, we need to add the methods inside our generic repository so as to be able to populate with these kind of new behaviors. And I'm going to go into the generic repository, so let me search this inside here, and we need to add the two methods, and I'm going to say task of T, and I'm going to call this get entity with spec or with specification. I'm going to make this as a spec, and inside here I'm going to call the array specification of type T, and I'm going to call this as a spec, and I'm going to add another one for getting now the lists, and I'm going to say task. I'm going to call this T, and I'm going to score this as list async, and I'm going to pass I specification, and it will be type of T, of course, and I'm going to code this as a spec. All right, and now we have seen that we are now going the wrong way setting up this specification, and it's kind of a lot of tedious work, but I want you to keep following and have patience while we set this up. We will see the benefit of this while we are going to implement complicated stuffs, and I can guarantee you that this is now the basics that we need so as to be able to add the pagination and the sorting and the filtering. And we're going to see next on how to implement this method into the generic repository. And I don't want to make these videos long as we are getting into the complicated stuffs. I want you to take some bit of air while we set this up. So see you guys in the next video. Stay cool.